Boruto now has a Shinjutsu which might be inspired from the UZUHIKO god, and it was teased almost 7 chapters ago. The UZUHIKO is the power that he might have learned in the domain of gods under the guidance of Shibai, and the hints to back this theory are totally insane. So let's dive into Boruto's divine connection and some brand new theories. You must be familiar with all the similarities that Boruto and Shibai coincidentally seem to share, like the horn of Borushiki looking more like that deity than Momoshiki himself. Some people argue the entity inside Boruto is actually fused Momoshiki and his horn resembles Kinshiki. From my perspective, Shibai impersonating Momoshiki makes more sense than this one, cause the monster returned in his base form to give Boruto the karma. The eyes in the background of the UZUHIKO god panel also look similar to the pure eye. Now the theory that I came up with talks about Boruto learning a new Shinjutsu in the same realm, and a huge hint for this possibility comes from the title of chapter 75, the domain of gods. It's the same chapter where Shibai UZUHIKO was introduced, and a panel of him using a Shinjutsu looks way too similar to Boruto's UZUHIKO. Before I expand on this, let's understand why the domain of gods might be a real place in Narutoverse, and Boruto could have already been there. Kishimoto has cleverly used some elements from the computer world while naming his character, like Code and Bug are pretty obvious. Daemon is a program that runs continuously in the background, and Aida is a high-level programming language, which is a reference to omnipotence reprogramming the whole reality. It seems like Kishimoto is trying to implement the scientific plots in Boruto that he had originally planned for Samurai 8. By this we can conclude there might be some more similarities between Boruto and Samurai 8, and we will discuss them later. A domain is also a computer term which refers to a realm of administrative autonomy, authority or control. So the domain of gods would refer to the realm of an UZUHIKO god, where everything is under his control. Shibai is technically the admin of this realm, and he must have made it with the programming spell known as omnipotence. The higher dimension that was mentioned by Amado could be the throne of Shibai, where he must have planned for everything that's happening in the universe. The UZUHIKO god had even left his mortal body behind, cause he apparently knew that someone would find it, leading to a domino effect. Code and Kawaki have already got the deity's power in an interesting way. While Code was modified to have his Shinjutsu, Kawaki has the powers of Ishiki, and it's very likely that even he was revised by Amado with the divine power. This means the Rinnegan of Claw Grimes and Kawaki's Dharma Eye actually belong to Shibai UZUHIKO. Also, the Karma Trio was apparently destined to possess the powers of the deity only because Code seems to have a Rinnegan on his forehead, and unlike Ishiki, Kawaki has the Dharma gun in the same eye as Shibai. So it seems like he planned the destinies of the Karma Trio from his godly domain, and there could be some crazy reasons behind why he let them have his powers. The way he planned the power-ups of Kawaki and Code is pretty sensible, but the thought-provoking stuff lies within Boruto and his Jogan awakening, which is presumably the eye of Shibai. Why did he choose a mortal to wield this eye at first place? And is the Jogan actually the link for Boruto to enter the domain of gods? Well, Shibai is technically the game master of Narutoverse due to his divine stature and omnipotent powers. It weakens the theory of Boruto being his reincarnation for some interesting reasons. It would be boring for a game master or creator to just witness the game he made. This line is from the Sword Art Online anime, and it kinda teases the role of Shibai in Boruto's story. It could have been assumed that he gave Boruto his dojutsu to keep an eye on everything that's happening, but why would he do that if he has the omnipotent powers and has literally planned the events of the show? Momoshiki mentioned multiple UZUHIKOs turning into gods, but the power of omnipotence and clairvoyance are unique to Shibai cause they were manifested by Aida. The other UZUHIKO gods could have some other powers that might be the source of Daemon's abilities. I have a really cool theory explaining why the second UZUHIKO god might be Jashin and how Amado used his remains to modify Daemon. The prophecy says the one who subscribes to this channel will see that video very soon, so make sure to join the bell gang. Coming back to Shibai's role in the story, let's understand why Kishimoto decided to make Boruto a universal warrior and how these two chapters have already teased the final villain, which is not Shibai. The UZUHIKO Rasengan translates to universal vortex. I have noticed Kishimoto smartly naming his characters in Boruto to tease the upcoming plot elements. Like Aida's name comes from Aida Lovelace, the first female computer programmer. The omnipotence literally programs the reality as per the user's will, explaining the deeper meaning behind Aida's name. Even the computer program that I mentioned is named after the same lady. In case of Daemon, it can be concluded that his ability works in the background. That's how he reflects every attack of his opponent. His reflection power runs as a background process rather than being under the direct contact of the user, just like the computer program. In case of Code and Bug, I think Bug is gonna be the reason of Code's downfall, which is what a bug usually does to a computer code or program. So the UZUHIKO having a similar significance in the story just because it translates to universal can be the case. case here. It seems like Shibai had summoned Boruto in his domain to awaken his pure power and make him a capable warrior. Now you guys might be wondering, if he had planned the destinies of humans himself with omnipotence, why would he need to take a part in his own game? Well, this is where things get interesting. Shibai could himself be a part of a bigger game which is out of his control. The omnipotence doesn't work on Otsutsuki, so you might be thinking either say he's against some other Otsutsuki god. But what I believe is that the war of Shibai Otsutsuki is against the species who share a strong hatred for his race. I'm talking about the Ten Tails, who have the desire to kill the Otsutsukis as shown in the second chapter. It could be that this species has evolved into a greater danger than the Celestial clan, and just because Shibai can't return to his mortal form, he chose the Kama trio as the saviors of the universe. Now you could argue that if Boruto wants to kill Code, how does it make sense for all three of them to unite? Well, you are forgetting the number of L's that Code has taken ever since he gained the will of an Otsutsuki. Ishiki must have no knowledge about the dangers of the Ten Tails simply because he hasn't traveled the universe as much as Shibai. Boruto's concern about the horrors of Ten Tails might also be the knowledge that Shibai Otsutsuki bestowed upon him. The reason Boruto, Kawaki and Code would unite could be because the Ten Tails is a threat to all of them. This is why Kishimoto has been expanding on the lore of Ten Tails in the story. It's a deliberate attempt to set up the most interesting turning points of the show. Now that we know the final villain won't be an Otsutsuki member, rather a Ten Tails monster who might have gained consciousness somehow, let's discuss how Boruto's entry to the domain of gods is highly plausible. As I said earlier, Kishimoto has been using the elements from Samurai 8 in the story, but in a smarter way. Hachimaru got an eye scar similar to Boruto, and towards the end of the story, he got to meet the warrior god who granted him the divine abilities. Implying this in Boruto's case, the possibility of him meeting Shibai Otsutsuki becomes way more plausible. Now before discussing the mind-blowing plot predictions that I came up with, I would like to tell you guys that you can become a Kama Knight by joining my Discord down below. We'll be discussing all sorts of theories and predictions there, along with sneak peeks to my future videos, so make sure to join it. Moving on to the theory, I hope you guys remember the arm of Danzo that was full of Sharingans. Now what if this body modification plot point gets revisioned in Amado's case in the most unexpected way? I'm not talking about the modification that he made to the cyborgs, but the alteration of his own body. I think the remains of Shibai that he talked about is actually his own body. Amado could be the will of Shibai Otsutsuki, just like how the Zetsu was Kaguya's will. When Shibai left his mortal body, he must have turned his remains into a living being who had his memories rewritten. It should be easy for someone like him, who wields every Shinjutsu in existence along with the Omni powers. Even Boruto mentioned in chapter 75 that he expected Amado's scheme to be even more messed up. Momoshiki also finds the narrative of Amado about his daughter suspicious, and even though Aida confirmed it with Senringan, chances are what she saw was made up by Shibai so that he could pave a way for reaching his purpose. The purpose to reincarnate himself in mortal form to deal with the Ten Tails himself. However, Aida's omnipotence became a hurdle in that plan, but I think even that's a part of Shibai's bigger game. He will resurrect himself later in the story when Kawaki would put his Kama on a vessel for some unknown reasons. Currently he's just enlightening Boruto, cause after all he's also a pawn in his game. If Amado's body being the remains of Shibai turns out to be true, then it could be that he might have sent Kashinkoji to Konoha sometime in the past to feed Boruto something that's filled with Shibai's DNA. This explains why the Jogan awakened in the very first arc of the anime, and the pills that he gave him later would be an enhancement of the same. The fact that Kashinkoji was untraceable in Konoha backs this theory further. Moving on to the final one, it could be that Boruto might have traveled back in time to empower his younger self with godly chakra. In this way it would explain how everything happening in Boruto is a time loop. He is himself responsible for the Jogan's awakening, and the reason he said to Kawaki if this was the only possible outcome is because he can't believe after breaking through time and making the necessary preparations, the village was still destined to get destroyed. Find out what I think about Sasuke's new form and the claw rhymes in these videos, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stuff. I will see you next time.